We need smart kids in this country, and we need healthy kids, and thank you for your leadership. We're going to get there.
At the Biden EPA, we saw industries suffocate. But at the Trump EPA, the Green New Deal is dead.
Welcome back to America Decides. In sequence, that was Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin talking during today's cabinet meeting about what they regard as either their agenda items or their accomplishments under President Trump. Alex Tin and David Schechter are following each of these issues. I'm going to start with Alex here with me on health. Alex, RFK Jr., the Health and Human Services Secretary, talked about something that has been set in motion by the administration. He described it as a ban on petroleum-based dyes. It's not quite a ban. Explain what's happened and what may happen.
Yeah, I mean, let's be clear about this, right? There are only 2 food dyes that are almost never used in the food supply these days that are actually supposedly going to be banned. That was in an announcement from the Food and Drug Administration a couple days ago. Outside of those 2 very rarely used food dyes, everything else, the FDA and HHS has said that they are going to try to ask the food industry to stop using, not go through the much more complicated, much more difficult process of actually trying to ban those food dyes, as the Biden administration did for Red 3 just a couple months ago. So yes, it is not a ban, not by any stretch of the imagination, and that's something that's frustrated a lot of advocates in this space because they've been calling for a ban of these food dyes for so long.
And they were supportive under the sort of banner of Make America Healthy Again, the MAHA thing. Is this an instance where that advocacy is running into some of the same industry roadblocks that it encountered before?
Yeah, I mean, look, it depends on who you ask,
sure,
right?
Of course.
But it is interesting because some of the folks that I talk to, both at the FDA and industry, say that they're at an interesting point now where in some ways everyone can have their cake and eat it too, right? You know, the industry gets to say that, look, we're complying with this request from the Trump administration, but they don't actually have a hard deadline they have to meet. So, you know, a lot of companies, they can take their time to actually try to remove some of these artificial dyes, and maybe
and part
some
of that
won't.
might be in response to consumer choices and preferences.
Exactly, right. You know, we know that a lot of companies have already been phasing out some artificial dyes. And of course, the reason that advocacy groups are so frustrated by it is the reason that you want to ban on these dyes in the first place is not because of those companies. It's because of all the smaller food manufacturers, you know, the people that are making the generic cupcakes that at your local grocery store that don't necessarily have to follow consumer preference and maybe are slipping in a couple food dyes into those, you know, Easter cupcakes you buy once a year.
Alex, there's lots to cover in this space. You cover it well. I guarantee you'll be back at this desk. But for that update, I thank you very much. I want to bring in now CBS News national environmental correspondent David Schechter to talk about climate changes. David, what would you say are the most important takeaways from the early actions in this space under President Trump?
I think the biggest issue here, Major, is essentially the complete 180 reverse from the direction the country was on to where we are now. Under the Biden administration, some of the most stringent environmental rules in the country, in the world. Climate policy that was the strongest in the world, to now a fundamental shift in the Biden administration, or in the Trump administration, where we've gone from regulating the environment to really supporting the fossil fuel industry is really the focus of where the EPA is on trying to make it easier to drill for oil and explore oil on federal lands. It's really a change from renewable energy back to fossil fuels. That's really the biggest issue that you can find right now.
And David, I've seen some reporting from your team about the possible implications of that, either reducing the emphasis on or undermining entirely green new energy, because there is some manufacturing and job creating component there.
Yeah, in the previous administration, you had the green economy, the green jobs are going at twice the rate of the general economy. So there was a tremendous emphasis on building plants and battery plants, electric cars. And now you can see with some of these changes that there's questions about whether those factories, many of them have been built, are being built, may be built. The questions about the funding that would go there. And what's interesting to some of your audience is that a lot of those are in red districts where congressmen who may have voted against the legislation, the IRA, are now asking for exemptions to protect those jobs in their communities that they obviously like having jobs in their communities, new green jobs in red districts.
And David, I want to talk to you about something that some in our audience may have seen in a headliner. Earlier this week, federal government dismissed some 400 scientists involved in what's called the National Climate Assessment. How big a deal is that?
It's a very big deal. This is mandated by Congress about every 5 years that there be a report on the state of the climate in the United States. We know, Major, that the climate is changing. We don't necessarily need to have more evidence of that, although that's good, and you can see the trends and where we're going. What the report like this does is says, hey, there's a farmer in Missouri, and in Missouri, these are the issues that you'll be facing in the next 5 years as it relates to drought or relates to too much extreme rainfall or what might happen to fires in California, how communities can prepare, how the country can prepare. That's the essence of this document. By telling these 400 scientists who are all working essentially voluntarily on this project, by the way, they weren't being paid, so there was no cost savings there. We don't need you anymore. That means we're not going to likely get that report, and there's some indication that there may be a report that comes out that says, hey, here's how climate change is actually good for us. So a big change in tone here, obviously, and that report is an important report. We may never see actually what those scientists were working on.
David Schechter, it's always a pleasure. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you.